Welcome friends, welcome back to the kitchen. Welcome to Sunday morning in the old cookbook show. Today we're going to do another recipe out of the Five Roses cookbook. This is a really great cookbook, published in 1915. And the recipe we're going to do today is potato doughnuts. Now this is a recipe that I've wanted to do for a while. A couple of years ago, sitting on the porch with one of my cousins, he started talking about potato doughnuts. And I thought, you know, I'm going to make that recipe. And for whatever reason, it sort of got pushed to the back burner. I never got to it. But all of the research I did at that time led me to believe that this was a recipe that was first published in the 1930s in New England, sort of Maine. And then I was researching through this cookbook and I came across potato doughnuts. And obviously, this cookbook is from 1915, which is before the 1930s. So I doubled down on my research and went really deep. And what I found was that in 1877, the fall of 1877, this recipe was published in probably a dozen American newspapers across the Midwest. Now, all of those newspapers published exactly the same recipe, exact word for word recipe, which isn't unusual, not unusual at all. This recipe goes way back into the 1870s, and if it's showing up in 1877 in a newspaper, obviously it goes back even farther than that, and I'd be interested to find out how far back it goes. But it gets a little bit hazy around that time period because not everything is digitized, not everything is searchable. So in this bowl, I have potatoes, sugar, baking powder, and I'm going to add some melted butter and a little bit of vanilla. And about a cup of milk. Now, if anybody out there edits Wikipedia pages, you might want to edit the Wikipedia page to sort of reflect that this recipe wasn't published for the first time in the 1930s, that it goes way back, way farther than that, into the 1870s. So on the day that I'm shooting this, that's what Wikipedia says. Wikipedia, not always right. So in goes the milk. There's a little bit of butter left in the bottom. If you saw chunks going in, that was the butter that was left in there. So I'm going to give this a mix. Now, recipe says mix as usual, and that I'm supposed to just put in enough flour to make a soft dough. So there's no measurement for the flour. I just need to bring this together. So given the amount of liquid I have here, I'm going to start out with a couple of cupfuls of flour, and I'm not really measuring it. I'm just kind of scooping it out. I know that I'm probably going to go to at least 4.5, maybe 5 cups of flour. And once the flour is mixed in, I'm just going to give it a little bit more and keep mixing, judging, mixing, going back and checking it out. Now, the 1877 recipe in those newspapers is pretty much exactly the same proportions as this recipe I'm doing here today, except for one difference. Like a lot of recipes that were yeasted prior to 1900, after 1900, you start to see them swapping out yeast and instead using baking powder or baking soda and cream of tartar. And this was a common change. And someday I'll do the yeasted version because I'm sure it will have a slightly different texture than this one. But, you know, pandemic, everybody's having trouble with yeast, so I thought I'd just do the baking powder version today. Okay, I think I've got a dough that's workable. So out onto the surface here, I'm going to put some flour. Maybe a little bit more because the dough is kind of tacky and sticky. And we'll put it out and roll it out. It says to about a 1/2 inch thick. Okay, I think we're good. So, got a donut cutter, and we'll just cut out some donuts. Oh, that dough's nice. Now, all it says is to fry in hot grease. So, I've got some hot grease, and I'm only going to put in 4 at a time because I don't want to overcrowd the pot and have the temperature drop too much. Now, of course, as is the way these recipes are written, there's no time for frying. You just have to kind of keep an eye on it, and you will need to turn them over at least once so they fry evenly. So some of these I'm going to put out and let them cool on a rack, and some of them I'm going to toss in fine sugar as soon as they come out of the oil, so the sugar sort of coats in at the top. Okay, onto the cooling rack. Potato doughnuts. Spudnuts.
Oh, spudnuts. Look at you.
Spudnuts.
Is that what they're called in the book?
No, they're called potato doughnuts.
Okay.
In the book. But Bobby called them spudnuts, and apparently that's the name.
Okay, that works for me.
So,
I want to taste them.
Yes.
Do I need to, and
No,
is there an
so-
introduction?
No, so these...
I didn't even say hello. Sorry, hi.
Some of these I left plain, some I dipped in sugar. Some are the donut holes, and some are just the pieces of dough that were
That
left
looks like
on,
a little dog.
Yeah, the pieces of dough that were left on the counter.
They're like
after.
animal donuts instead of animal cookies. Oh, you ate that one. Oh. So I love cake donuts.
Mm-hmm.
That old style, old fashioned donut. Like
Yeah.
the non-risen. I also like a really great French cruller.
Mm-hmm.
But these are my donuts of choice. Like if there's a box of donuts,
Yeah.
this is the one I look for.
And so,
These are great.
the texture's great,
I need a bigger one.
and they stay apparently they stay fresh longer. It says in the book, which is pretty much true because it's that the potato brings something to it.
And they're not super sweet.
Yeah.
So it's the sugar on the outside that gives it that extra bit of flavor, in this case sugar or cinnamon or whatever it is. You can dip them in chocolate. You can
Glaze them. You can
put colored sprinkles
sprinkles
on them.
on them. Yeah. And this is a donut style potato donuts that I don't see at a lot of Canadian donut shops. Not that I spend a lot of time hanging out at Canadian donut shops, but on the
It's not
times,
very Canadian of you not to hang out at the donut shop.
I know. At the times when we stop in at Timmy's on the highway to get a tea, I don't see this style of donut in the case, and I think that's a shame because it's a good donut. I think people would gravitate towards this. So
I'm definitely going to have a problem with this many donuts in the house.
with this many donuts. There's one other donut recipe on that page that I'm really drawn to, and that's the molasses donut. So I think in a couple of weeks I'm going to give that one a go and see how it turns out. Thanks for stopping by. See you again soon. Oh, and if you're on Wikipedia, please change that Wikipedia page and make it reflect that the potato donut has a much longer history than 1935 or 36 or whatever it is. Again, thanks for stopping by. See you again soon.